So now we'll move on to our next speaker, who's going to be Simon from UCL, who's going to be talking about hybrid teaching. So
Good afternoon. So let me just share my screen. There we go. So as Eleanor said, my name's Simon Harden, and I'm from the stats department at UCL. What I'm going to share with you is experience we've had as a department. So it's not just me talking here. It's what we've got from everybody in our department. Just to give you some sense of size. The year that I'm talking about, the academic year that we're just coming to the close in, we have approximately 600 students running through our department. So that's the Department of Statistical Science, and then we're also helping service students from and teaching stats to students from other departments as well. And at the beginning of the year, Eleanor and I put together a session just to talk about hybrid teaching with members of staff, and so hopefully this is a bit of payback from them, that they come back to us with lessons and things that they found useful. What I'm not going to do is spend a lot of time talking about whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. I thought what I'd do is try and focus on how to do it well, how to make the most of it, and then perhaps any lessons that we could take forward to other forms of teaching as well. And just in case you're wondering, there's no hybrid animals in the photo behind my head there. So what I'm going to say isn't really rocket science. But hopefully, as I go through, and I'll try to be brief, there'll be one or two brief, interesting distractions as we go through. Right, so just a very brief bit of history. So if we think back to approximately 2 years ago, 2020, I remember getting instructions coming down from UCL centrally saying, whatever you do, don't do hybrid teaching. So this was the summer of 2020, when we were beginning to think about the teaching for the first full academic year, which was likely to be remote, and we were being told don't do hybrid teaching. And I must admit, my first reaction was, well, what on earth is hybrid teaching? And since I don't know what it is, I'm really glad that I don't actually have to carry any of it out. So what we mean by hybrid teaching is where we have students who are both, some students are online, some students are actually present, and we're trying to service both of them at the same time in a live environment. So we're in a lecture theatre with some students, and then we've got a load of other students who may be accessing the same material and whatever I'm saying, or the other members of staff are saying, but doing that online. By about the summer of 2021, if we now go forward a year, the university I'm at had made the rather strange decision to say, well, most people should come back for live teaching for the current academic year, but actually not everybody. And some of you may not have to come back at all. And so what they now started saying to us was, rather than saying, don't do hybrid teaching, they say, you've got to do some hybrid teaching because some of your students are going to be remote, but a load of students have come back as well. So we were sort of forced into this for the current academic year, not for all our modules, not for all the sessions, but certainly most members of staff were engaged in doing it. I think this whole area of teaching over the last couple of years has given rise to lots of new terms: hybrid teaching, blended teaching, synchronous, asynchronous, all these sort of things. And I think they're all basically, I guess, euphemisms for teaching that's not as good as face-to-face. So whenever you hear universities talking about their splendid blended offering, that probably means it's not as good as face-to-face. So that's my approach to the whole thing. So that's where we got to, and so the current academic year, we've been doing quite a lot of this hybrid learning, or hybrid teaching anyway. I thought it'd be worth just very briefly saying something about the technical setup required for this to do it well. Now, in general, hybrid teaching is not as good as face-to-face teaching. And I'm just going to leave it as that. And now we'll sort of talk about how we might do as well as we can. And obviously what we're trying to do is achieve some sort of parity, so that the students who are not in the building, not actually face-to-face in the room with the lecturer, are getting some measure of equivalent experience and equivalent level of learning. So for instance, things that are not good or equivalent measures of learning. So if we think about video, first of all, what's not good, what would not be a good video is just setting up a laptop with and logging into Zoom and having the rather small camera on top of the laptop vaguely pointing in the direction of the lecturer. That would not really certainly be offering an equivalent experience at home. And similarly for audio, just hoping that the laptop is going to pick up what the lecturer is saying is not going to be appropriate either. I think the third area just to mention is about interactions, but so interactions between students and the lecturers, or even between students themselves. And I've got a separate slide set up for that in a moment. So in terms of actually what's the best approach to a technical setup, the two options really. We were lucky at our university in that our IT department went round most of the major lecture theatres and installed new kit, hardware and software, so that we could integrate the facilities in the lecture rooms, the cameras, the audio, all the recording facilities we were using Zoom, or it could be any other platform. And so you didn't need to take extra kit into the room because it was all set up there. There were cameras pointing at you centrally, and you could then feed those out to the people who were accessing remotely via Zoom. So that's an ideal way, but I think if you're not going to do that, then you do need to take in extra kit. Just relying on a single laptop with a Zoom link is not good enough. So the sort of extra kit you might take in is an extra camera, perhaps a good microphone. And I think the key thing, or one of the key messages or key things we've learned, is that what you really need is you need to be logging in more than once. So as the lecturer, you should probably logged into your session, whether it's Zoom or whatever, more than once. What this means is that you may have your main login where you're presenting your material, etc., and then you have a second one where you can actually see what the students are seeing. So you get some sense as to what they're seeing of you. And then you need to think about whether you're going to use a visualizer or a tablet for writing maths, etc. As with all good teaching, you need to prepare the students and make sure that they've their expectations are managed. So my general recommendation is to start off by saying to students, this is going to be really crap for a few weeks. So at least they're not too, their expectations aren't too high right at the beginning. Things that they need to expect is that you'll go more slowly through the material than you might normally expect to. I think setting up rules for how the chat is going to work, and perhaps if you're going to, you actually going to allow verbal discussion as opposed to discussion over chat, and if you are, you need to set up some rules for that. And then finally, you need to think about microphone management, because what you often find, and I'm going to talk in a minute about interaction, is that students are interacting with you online through chat or various other bits of software, even if they're in the room. And so you make sure if they're doing that, they've got various microphones turned off, etc. Otherwise, you get lots of feedback. Okay, so that's preparing the students. And I did want to talk particularly about interaction with the students. It's tempting in these hybrid sessions, perhaps to do as we might have done at the fully online sessions, is just to rely on the chat in Teams, Zoom, Blackboard, or whatever else you're actually planning to use. There are some downsides with those. They're very often, the chat is not anonymous, so students are slightly reluctant, and it can be difficult to keep a grip on what's going on in terms of the level of engagement and the questions being asked. And so certainly what we found for our hybrid teaching, UCL subscribes to Mentimeter, so we will have access to that. And I think most of the lecturers said that one of the most useful things that they've learned from hybrid teaching is to essentially set up a screen a bit like the one I'm showing you there, and then make that available throughout the class. So students, rather than posting questions to chat on Zoom, are posting them there. They can see other people's posts, and then they can, add things if they're new, but it's much clearer and it's much easier for the lecturer to keep a track of what's going on. So I think that is probably the lesson that is the most valuable, and the thing that we will be taking away and possibly using in non-hybrid session is about interacting with the students electronically, even in a face-to-face class, because students are typically on their phones anyway whenever we're teaching, so we might as well get them doing something that's relevant to the experience they're supposed to be undertaking. Okay, so that's a bit about interaction. Couple more things I wanted to mention. The first is about just getting help, because managing a hybrid session is a complicated sort of thing. UCL, the word that people use was co-pilots, and I was looking for images of co-pilots, and you won't be surprised to know that pretty much all the images featured men and not women. But anyway, I apologise for that. There's a couple of ways that helpers can be useful. And the first one, actually, rather strangely, is the setup at the beginning. Setting up a good hybrid session with all the correct technical facilities is very complicated, and certainly takes longer than what we have at UCL, which is the 10 minutes assigned between lectures. So getting some help for that is really useful. And then the second thing is actually during your session, do you have someone with you, a co-pilot with you, managing the subject matter itself? So you're obviously, if that is the case, you're going to need someone with appropriate subject level expertise. What most people found is for the first 2 or 3 sessions, they needed someone to help. But as term went on, they gradually got control of how things worked, and they got the students working in the way they wanted. And so perhaps after 3 or 4 sessions, they found they didn't need them. And then a question which I guess comes up in all remote teaching we need to think about is, if you're going to have a co-pilot working with you, are you allowing them to answer the questions remotely and online, but which may mean that not everybody is seeing the questions and the answers as they come up. Right, so finally, just pulling together 1 or 2 key things or key tips that I've been given by people who've got a lot of experience doing this hybrid teaching. Firstly, write yourself a checklist. It's so complicated getting set up properly that people said, well, I set it all up and then I realized I forgot to press record or something like that. So take a checklist along with you to every session and practice in every room before you actually go and teach there. Start off simple. So the recommendation we made to people here is in the first few sessions, don't try and write maths on a tablet, because it's just, you've got too many bits of kit going on at that point. So start simple for the first couple of sessions and then make it more complicated as you go along. And one of the ways that people found it was good to interact more with the people online is to every now and then go and speak to them. So walk over to a machine, your machine that's running perhaps the online, your second machine, which might have your standard Zoom or whatever view, and speak into it, say hello, can someone react, etc., just so that people feel, if you're a member of the class online, that you're actually being addressed specifically. And one final little tip for if you're running 2 devices and you've got 2 windows, make sure you've got different names on them so that the students watching are clear which device they, for instance, might like to send you a private message on chat about. So I think the main takeaway from us, hopefully, we're hoping that we're not going to have to do hybrid teaching again. Hopefully, we've discussed a bit about, if you do have to do it, how to do it well. I think the main thing we're taking away is how to improve our face-to-face interaction, and that's by essentially using some of the techniques we've learned on that as we've survived through the last 12 months. So thank you very much for that. I think I've sort of been a bit downbeat upon hybrids, and I've shown you various pictures of hybrids as we've gone along. And I was just going to end by saying that not all hybrids in the flora and fauna kingdoms are sterile. Some of them actually can produce offspring, which can be beautiful. So hopefully your experience of hybrid teaching won't necessarily be too bad.
Now I'm going to open the floor for questions for both Simon and Eleni. So maybe Simon, if you're still hopefully with us, you could pop on your camera. That's great. So do feel free, please don't be shy, pop up your hand on Zoom, and hopefully I'll be able to spot people doing that. So Christian.
Hi, I've got a quick question for Simon, if that's okay.
Go for it.
Hi, Simon. I was just wondering if you trialled tracking cameras when you were doing the hybrid teaching.
No, we haven't.
Okay.
I'm assuming you're talking about tracking the lecturer here rather than the student, which obviously might be perhaps a different challenge. No, we haven't done that. I think quite a few of the lecturers felt that they sort of ended up just being quite static because of all this kit going on. So it sounds to me like a really good idea. Yeah. So it's not something the kit in our lecture rooms actually did. So we'd have had to introduce our own. But no, it sounds like an excellent idea.
So the reason I ask is a couple of colleagues at Swansea trialed this term, and we bought a couple of small tracking cameras, and I was really surprised how good they were. So the quality was so good that it would pick up writing on the boards, which meant that lecturers could lecture in a traditional style, but yet it all was recorded. And they're also quite smart in that you can indicate to the camera if you wanted to stop tracking, let's say to spend a bit of time on the board, and then to tell the camera to start tracking you again. So I was quite impressed with them. Yeah, just a quick comment. Thanks.
That sounds great. I bet that sounds very expensive though.
They're not too bad. I think we paid, I think it was 250 per camera. So
wow.
yeah, not too bad.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks.